Imagine being born into a world where your life is already decided. Your job, your status, even your beliefs are chosen for you. All because a king said so. You don't vote, you don't question authority, and if you speak too loudly, you might lose more than your freedom. For most of human history, this wasn't unusual. This was the normal. Today's episode is about the moment people finally said, "What if power did not belong to kings?" This is the story of classical liberalism, the political ideology that helped invent modern freedom. Before classical liberalism, most societies were built on absolute authority. Kings ruled by birth, churches ruled by doctrine, and empires ruled by force. Power flowed from the top down, not from the people up. If you were born poor, you stayed poor. If you were born powerful, you stayed powerful. Questioning authority was not called critical thinking, it was called treason. But in the 1600s and 1700s, something began to change. People started asking questions. Why does one family get to rule everyone else? Why should the government tell me what to believe? Why can't people decide for themselves? These questions did not come from politicians or ordinary people. They came from philosophers. The Enlightenment was like humanity waking up and saying, wait, none of this is written in stone. Thinkers like John Locke, Adam Smith, and Montesquieu argued that humans are not born to obey rulers. We are all born with natural rights. Locke famously argued that every person has the right to life, to liberty, and to own property, not because a king allows it, but simply because we are human beings. Government in this view is not a sacred institution, it is a tool. If it protects our rights, the government is doing its job. If it does not, it has no legitimacy. That idea was radical in itself. And at its core, classical liberalism asks one big question. What happens if we leave people free? Classical liberals believe society works best when individuals are allowed to think freely, to speak freely, to trade freely, and to live freely. They saw society like a marketplace, not just a place to buy and sell goods, but also ideas, skills, and innovation. No single person controls the market. Everyone participates voluntarily. The government's role is limited to protecting people's rights, to enforce and overlook at contracts, and to maintain order, and never to control people's lives. The assumption was simple. If people are free to pursue their own interests, progress would happen naturally. Classical liberals believe freedom was not chaos. Freedom was supposed to be productive. When people are free, artists create art, inventors invent, and entrepreneurs would take risk. Think about it. Would innovation thrive if every idea needed permission? Would science advance if questioning authority was illegal? Too much control, classical liberals argue, kills creativity. Not because people are bad, but because people are constrained. They are boxed in. Liberty was not just a moral idea, it was a practical one. Adam Smith, one of the most famous classical liberals, introduced the idea of the free market. This did not mean no rules or no government at all. It meant that there is voluntary exchange, that competition is existent, and that there is limited government interference. Smith argued that when individuals pursue their own interests, they unintentionally benefit society. He called this the invisible hand. A baker does not bake bread out of kindness. A baker bakes bread to earn a living, and in doing so, people still get bread. Classical liberals believed markets coordinate human activity better than centralized planning, not because people are perfect, but because no single authority knows everything. One of the most important contributions of classical liberalism is the idea of limited government power. Government power must be restrained, that government must be held accountable, and that government should be divided. This led to concepts like separations of power through our checks and balances, our constitutions, and the enforcement of the rule of law. That law should apply to everyone, including leaders. No one is above it. This was a direct attack on monarchy and absolute rule, and it changed history altogether. Classical liberalism was not just a theory, it inspired the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and modern constitutional democracies. The idea that governments exist to serve the people, not the other way around. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and private property are all ideas that didn't just appear randomly, they came from classical liberalism. But classical liberalism was not perfect. Freedom in theory did not always mean freedom in practice. Early classical liberal societies allowed child labor. They ignored economic inequality and excluded women and minorities. Critics argued that freedom means little to nothing if people lack food, education, or safety, the very basic of needs. This criticism would later give rise to social democracy, progressivism, and Marxism. But classical liberalism did open the door to freedom. It did not, however, solve everything. Every time we debate on topics like government regulation, taxes, free speech, individual rights, we are debating on principles of classical liberalism. Even people who criticize it often accepts its foundations. The idea that individuals matter, that power should be limited, and that freedom is valuable. These ideas are so embedded in modern life that we forget they were once revolutionary. Classical liberalism did not promise a perfect society. It promised something simpler. It is freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to fail, and freedom to create. It trusted individuals more than rulers. And that trust continues to shape our world today. That is why classical liberalism matters. Not because it answered every question, but because it changed what questions we were allowed to ask.